Well, it's a happy day for me today because I'm excited to be introducing my guest. You're going to be a speaker at our Growth Club in October here. And so I am speaking to Jim James, the author of The Unnoticed Entrepreneur, which, by the way, there are many The Unnoticed Entrepreneur. I love it.
Matching hat, matching book.
It looks so good on you. It looks so good on you. What I love is, so you're welcome, Jim, that I'm buying all of my participants to my ActionCOACH Growth Club is going to get a copy of your book.
Thank you so much, Lee. That's amazing.
You're very welcome. It matters because we've got to do whatever it takes to help business owners to achieve what it is they want to achieve in life. So I want to tell people who are listening a little bit about you. So I'm gonna have to cheat and look at my notes because the list is so long. But you are an international entrepreneur. You have lived and built businesses over the last 30 years. You've lived in Asia the last 30 years? Okay.
Yep. Singapore and China, Lee.
Really?
Although I don't look obviously very Asian. I'm British and grew up in Africa and America, but
interesting.
I'm
and
back
I know
in the UK now.
Okay. And you went to university in the States. So we're always glad to have our people from over the pond here. We love having our...
Can I say go Tar Heels? Can I say that without upsetting anybody? Or I'll better upset somebody, especially NC State people. But luckily you're not
They're
in
not
North
going to
Carolina.
be listening now. We have KU and K-State in our audience, and those are also great schools too. But you have a coaching business, a radio show, you're a podcaster, and basically you're just there to help the entrepreneur, right? And I love that.
Yes, Lee, really, my whole business is around helping business owners to learn how to get noticed. And I do that by having fellow entrepreneurs explain how they do it, really, right? So, I've been an entrepreneur myself for many, many years. And I've also run an agency, which I started in Singapore in 95 when I was a much younger man than I am today. And, I'm used to charging clients, big companies, large amounts of money to do media relations. But with social media and digital, the tools are available now that ultimately liberate the sole entrepreneur, the practitioner that maybe has, 5 to 10 people. Technology, not just AI, but just generic MarTech, marketing technology, just enables companies of any size to compete with big companies. So it's really, really exciting. And that's really what I'm working on now with the book and the podcast and the radio show.
Say the name of your podcast just to make sure everyone knows.
It's like the hat. It's The Unnoticed Entrepreneur. Yeah. I mean, I'm a simple guy, so I called everything the same thing.
It's perfect. I love it. And we are but an inch away from the answers, right? And so the things that you provide are those answers that are out there that people have already found. Would you explain, do you mind sharing how being on a podcast can help an entrepreneur? Sure.
A podcast is a fabulous way to build engagement around your story as an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. And one of the great secrets of getting noticed is that your story is really what people want to resonate with, whether it's the journalists or it's the customers or the partners or the employees, right? Different stakeholders. Mm-hmm. And what a podcast does is it gives you a voice. Quite literally, you can use your voice to engage. And in traditional media relations, you write something and a journalist will edit it and filter it. Or if you use social media, it's competing with everything else that's beside it. Mm-hmm. But with podcasting, you have however many minutes or even hours to be you and to engage directly with the audience. And now with video and video casting, podcast isn't just about audio anymore. So it's your opportunity to sit wherever you are, where it's comfortable for you, and to communicate with people around the world in real time. And secondly, Lee, what's amazing about podcasting is you're creating content which you can repurpose. So not only have you been there one time sharing, as you and I now are, but afterwards you've got the assets so you can make an audio snippet, you can make a little short reel, you can embed that on your website, you can make it into an article, or as I've done is I've made those articles into books. So podcasting is an extremely effective and efficient medium really now that's opened up for entrepreneurs. So it's brilliant. I love it.
I do too. And I want to, so you're going to be speaking to my Growth Club group next month through a video that you pre-recorded for us. And I know you're going to tell us just a little bit about some of the things you're going to cover, especially for those people who can't attend. But before you do that, could I ask you one last question? One more question, and that is podcasting saturated? Is it saturated? Because I've heard people say, oh my gosh, the pool is so full, I don't want to jump in. Is that true?
Okay, I think depends on how you look at it. It depends if you're planning on guesting on podcasts or if you're planning on hosting a podcast. And for most people, honestly, it's better to be a guest and to use like Podmatch or Matchmaker or one of these tools, these platforms to be a guest. Loads of people, especially during the pandemic, including me, started a podcast. But for most people, keeping up a podcast is really not easy because it takes time and effort and money to do. So first of all, just distinguish, are you going to be a guest or a host? If you're going to be a guest, then there is no such thing as too many podcasts out there, right?
Got it.
But the issue really, Lee, is that there are a lot of podcasts that aren't really worth your time. And so, there are literally, I think, 10 million podcasts out there now. But just in the same way that people used to try and publish their own newsletters and then they dwindled, only a few of the really good ones became proper publications. So what we're starting to see is, if you like, sort of almost phase 3 or 4 of podcasting, which is where those ones that started and didn't really have a purpose or really have a promise, those are starting to fade away. And what we're seeing is a few really good shows that are in the top 3 to 5% worldwide. And those are the ones you want to get on.
Okay.
So not in that sense, Lee, not all podcasts are created equal. And so choose your time by doing the research, and you can listen to the podcast in advance. You can also use tools like listennotes.com, which has got a directory and also shows you where they're ranked. For example, my show's in the top 3% of shows. So align yourself with shows that are successful, and there's more than enough of those in many, many niches.
Sure. That's great. I love hearing that. And so you get the benefit of the podcast without having to do all the work, right? I love that. That's great. And that's all those tips that you're talking about are covered in your book too, in a greater detail, right? Or many.
Yes, some of them are. And the thing about the book is that there are 50 different entrepreneurs who are explaining different aspects of getting noticed. Okay. So we cover podcasting, we talk about SEO, we talk about using virtual events. And I guess the key point really, Lee, is that, although I've got my own 30 years of experience and I've served over 500 clients with my agency, I didn't want to just be, these are my ideas. What I wanted to do is introduce 50 different people's ideas. I've got a photographer in India who got sick and lost all his work. And what he did was he took a photograph of himself every day for a year, right? Because he was out of work and he was sick. So what he did is took a picture of himself every day. And at the end of 365 days, he had this amazing portfolio of self-portraits. Now, and then he's made that into a new business. So, I would have thought of that, right? So the whole point of the book is it's not my ideas. I've curated ideas. And yes, there's Sebastian Rusk in there who talks about podcasting absolutely as one channel. But there's a wealth of great ideas. Actually, all the people that will be watching my video will have their own expertise and their own experience. Mm-hmm. And really what I want to do is channel that, right? I'm not trying to control and be the only person who's got the ideas. I'm really trying to create a platform for these ideas to come out so that other people can find them and that they're accessible and relatable.
Beautiful. That is, I appreciate that. And I love the giving mentality too, the abundance. At ActionCOACH, our vision is world abundance through business re-education. And we can't learn it ourselves, but if you can learn it from 50 other people, it's the compound effect, right? I love that. It's beautiful.
Thank you, Lee. Yeah, and on the show now I have over 300 entrepreneurs who have shared their expertise and their insights. And I had, in fact, had Brad Sugars on my show, and we talked about, in his case, lumpy marketing, and how, he and his brother, took mannequins and just took the arm off and said, I want to get my arm in the door, and in England, everyone's a winner, right? But the idea is that may be relevant for one person somewhere, right? And it's not my idea, it's Brad's idea, and I can just help to share those kind of ideas. So
Right.
I love what ActionCOACH is doing. Love how Brad is such an amazing tour de force in this sharing, and so I'm really flattered to be invited to be taking a part, really, Lisa. Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, do you want to give us a sneak peek on some of the things you're going to cover when we present your presentation at Growth Club in October?
I can do. And I think that, what I'd love to do is just to share with you on screen. I call it the Holy Trinity of PR, right? And
I like that too. I think that's great.
Yeah. And this idea of using public relations to grow your sales. And there are some key tips. This is a little bit about the show and about me. But, most companies are finding getting leads to be their biggest challenge. I'm not going to give away the whole story here, but one of the key takeaways that I'd like for people to have is that authenticity is the most essential characteristic in a vendor. Okay. So authenticity is the number one quality that your customers are looking for. And I'm sharing that right at the beginning, Lee, because that's essentially a wonderful and liberating message. Because as we talked about at the very beginning of this call, entrepreneurs have stories. And actually, it's the stories that make us authentic. And it's those stories that make us authentic that make people want to do business with us. So a fundamental message that I'm trying to give to everybody from my books and the podcast is that being you is great. Don't be shy about that, and we've all got our various issues and challenges, but we don't have to be shiny, Barbie Ken style people, right? We can be ourselves and be successful. So that's my kind of one of the first takeaways. And then what I'm going to go into in this presentation is the rise of authenticity in terms of importance, also about the gradual erosion in trust by traditional media, and then obviously this idea that people are buying why you do it, not just sort of what you're doing, and this idea of telling your story. And you talked about podcasts, but there's other ways of doing that, whether it's through signage, through advertising, through blogging, through turning up at events. And so what I'm doing in this presentation is just sharing some of the different ways that you can start to share your story. But also later on, I'm also talking about some of the challenges that we face when we're doing marketing. And for example, 80% of whatever you say is going to be forgotten in the first 24 hours by the people that see it.
Scary, isn't it? When I saw that.
Yeah. So, and this has implications for how consistent we need to be. And one of the reasons why we need to be authentic is because, it's so hard to remember a lie, right? I mean, when we're kids, our parents say, tell the truth. And I realized later on, my parents were doing that because they knew I wasn't going to be very smart, right? They're like, don't lie because you'll forget what you were lying about. So it's just easier to be you, right?
That's the message right there. I love it.
Yeah. So the message is that my parents knew I wasn't going to be very smart, but I think that's probably not going to be very useful for the rest of your day. But the point being that whatever we say today will be forgotten, most of it tomorrow.
Right.
So a big part of communications is about consistency. Okay. And about showing up with what sometimes feels like a boring message, because we've said it before, but turning up with that time and time again. So in the presentation, I talk about that, and the consistency is the solution. And then I also talk about some cadence. Now, I don't want to give everything away here, but later on in the presentation, I do talk about the 4 different types of communication and the 4 different kinds of communicator that we want our business owners to be. And I'm not going to go into that now because otherwise people will go, well, I won't bother to watch the show.
Yeah, that's great. I love that tip that you gave. So I won't give it away either, but I was fascinated by that and I'll never forget it. So I'm looking forward to my clients and others to hearing that. It's going to be great.
Greatly. And I also introduced later on, as you know, something called the Active Communications Index, which is this idea of a very simple formula where you can keep your team and yourself on track to be communicating consistently. It's kind of like an acid ratio, as you have for cash flow, for example. You can have just a simple metric. I made it up myself. I'm a PR guy, but I have my own team tell me what my ACI is every week, because I know whether we're fluctuating or being consistent in terms of how much messaging we're sending out. So I'm trying to take tools and tips that hundreds and thousands of people use and make it accessible, because as entrepreneurs, the last thing we need is a kind of another methodology to try and remember. Most of us are not trying to become experts at marketing. We need to know enough to be able to give guidance to our team or to hire an expert, right? Know whether they're giving us the right steer or not. So my whole emphasis is on giving entrepreneurs a sense that being you is just who you need to be. That's great. Be authentic, but show up consistently as yourself, and then have some ways of measuring that you're turning up consistently so that your team can get into a cadence, just as they would with sales calls, just as they would with manufacturing and so on, because communication consistently over time will help you to, overcome that problem of the 80% memory loss.
I love that. Well, this has been really fascinating to me. And I really want to encourage the people who are seeing the snippet today, join us and get your book, the Unnoticed Entrepreneur. If nothing else, get the book. Yes, get the book, get the hat, whatever. Yes. But for those people who attend Growth Club on October 4th, we'll get a copy of the book, and we will be together as entrepreneurs learning, and we will be you produce that video for us. We'll watch it from beginning to end. When I watched it the first time, I took 2 pages of notes. So that tells you that there's a good content in there, and then take what it is out of there that you want to apply and be successful with it. So I thank you for the interview today. And I want people to know they can reach you. They can get you at jimajames.com. And if they go there, they can find you on all your platforms and wherever you are.
Yeah, exactly. jimajames.com is the easy place, and that gives you a signpost to the podcast, and there's a video channel with over 700 videos as well. And the podcast has over 650 episodes. There's articles. So yeah, I'm really here just to serve, Lee, with what I know as a channel for other people's knowledge and a little bit of my own wisdom as well. Although, as I say, my parents knew I wouldn't be so smart. So that's probably why they gave me a job asking other people how to do it rather than explaining how I would do it myself.
Oh, well, thank you. And I appreciate your abundance today, your time. And you're in the UK. I'm up very early. You're over the noon hour, but I kind of messed up my time frame, didn't I, a little bit? But that's okay. You're going to start my day off just right.
Lee, well, you started off mine, and I'm just astounded that you're so fresh at this time of day. It's incredible, and a credit to you and the energy that you bring into the team there. It's awesome. So thanks for following through, and a sign of how dedicated you are, that even though you had struggled a little bit with the time zone thing, you still made commitment to show up at the time you said you would. I think it says a lot about you.
Thank you. Well, I'm Coach Lee with ActionCOACH Business Coaching. I'm located in Wichita, Kansas. You can find us at kansasbizcoach.com. And we'd love to have a conversation with you to, who knows, start a relationship. Thank you, Jim. I appreciate you. And I will look forward to seeing you again.
Lee, thank you so much for inviting me to be on your show and sharing what I know with your community. I know that takes a risk on your part. So I really appreciate you reaching out and letting me be a part of what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Did we do it?
That's okay. We did it.
Okay, we did it. Wasn't that fun?